Yes, sir, Mr. Chair, members of the board. I've added, in light of the tragic events in Parkland with the high school shooting, I've added a school safety update to this agenda, and I will attempt to do the same report again tonight. But I've received several emails from concerned parents. Obviously, as a parent, when something like this happens, you immediately go to thinking about your kids and the safety of your kids. And I want to reiterate, as we have mentioned and said before, that our student and staff safety is the top priority in the Cobb County School District. That has not changed, and we're unwavering in having that as our top priority. That said, when an event like this happens, it should at least cause everyone in a position that has any kind of company building, whether it be public, private, or otherwise, it should cause you to reevaluate your protocols to make sure that you have, number one, the correct protocols in place, and number two, evaluate those protocols to see if, in fact, you can learn something from an event like this that you need to change. So we are absolutely going to be reevaluating those protocols. It's something that we do ongoing, but it's I do want to take this opportunity to kind of highlight some of the things that we already had in place. And as recently as this past January, just about 3 weeks ago, we did have a school safety and emergency preparedness principals meeting to where we had our public safety department, which again, we should be very, very proud of. We probably have, and I don't have this, I always use this anecdotal example. I don't know if it's empirical yet or not, but I'm just going to say that we've got the largest public school police force in the state. And I want to also say how much we appreciate them, but also point out that they are post-certified police officers, which means they go through the same approval and certification process as Cobb PD and all other state-approved police officers. So the training is exemplary, and also their professionalism. So I can't say enough about our police force. Public safety did conduct this training, and obviously we're not going to go into detail about a lot of the things that were discussed, but I wanted to take this opportunity in order to update the parents in our community and students, as I got an email from a student as well today, on what we are doing, and it's a continual process. And our parents and students and community alike need to rest assured, and that's very easy to say. And after an event like this, it's very hard to really grasp that we are taking student and staff safety as the top priority. Some of the things that were covered in this training, classroom door security, for example, something as simple as that. But when we conduct a code red drill, which all of our schools are required to do once every semester, 2 times a year. And so when those code red drills are conducted, it's a means of not only training, but also learning, because obviously a locked door is the first means of security for keeping our staff and students safe. So if something is prohibiting that door from being locked, we definitely want to know that, and we want to identify that and rectify that so that we can make sure that we have the most basic of safety procedures in place. The other issue is, and this came up as security has changed, is all of the classrooms being marked from the outside so that it's visible to first responders. Because obviously when first responders show up on our campus, when we show up on some of our campuses, we wouldn't know where to go if it was, classroom 303. And having those markings on the outside of our classrooms certainly benefit first responders. Having floor plans in the proper locations and easily accessible and clearly annotated. And then the code red and code yellow drill procedures. One of the things that we are implementing as we speak is an unannounced code red drill. And what I mean by that is public safety is going to show up on a campus and say, you're in code red, issue it, and then they are actually going to assess and analyze what that process produces. Are the staff members clearly trained and understanding exactly what to do? Do the students understand what to do? And we'll get to a video in a second, and I'll remind the board of the alert point system that we're in the process of completing in our high schools this year. That obviously changes the game for Cobb County School District, but because the communication of what code is being issued, obviously some things were learned immediately from this tragic event in Parkland, that causes us to re-examine some of our protocols and make sure that we have the best communicated protocols in place that we possibly can. Again, we'll be getting to that video in a little bit. But I want to say again about the unannounced code red drills. When a school goes through this, it is absolutely going to be uncomfortable for that school because, number one, it's a code red. Okay, there is no more uncomfortable situation or situational environment in a school than a code red. So, and especially it being unannounced. It's one thing to have a code red drill, and those are very important because it allows us to practice and train. Because, you know, everyone's familiar with the old adage about practice makes perfect, and that's not true. Practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. So if you don't take seriously the practice of a code red drill, then you're not going to be able to exhibit those skills needed, God forbid, should a situation arise. So we take that very seriously. We understand and we'll communicate to the principals that this is going to be an uncomfortable situation when that happens in your school, but it's absolutely necessary, as we have seen yesterday. You know, unfortunately, high school campuses are probably one of the most open campuses of any school district in any state. And you have to take different precautionary methods to make sure your staff and students are safe. And that's going to differ by campus because obviously we know that each campus layout is very different. Some of the emails I've received center around threats and, you know, being able to identify those threats and what do you do, you know, when a threat occurs. We take very seriously those threats. Again, our PD, our officers are quick to respond to those threats, whether it be verbal or whether it be, you know, unfortunately, social media has brought about, in my opinion, this is only my opinion, more negatives than positives. And social media seems to be the platform now for bragging and those kind of things. So when those types of threats occur, we very seriously take those into consideration. And while we cannot say that this is going to result in every situation, certainly a number of those will result in arrests because the threat is a very serious crime, and we treat those as serious crimes. Also, we're going to be doing not only the unannounced code red drills, but we're also going to be doing unannounced suspicious persons kind of, it's not a drill, but a situational awareness exercise to where we have a plainclothes policeman enter a school campus and see exactly how deep they can get before being challenged by an employee. And challenged meaning, can I help you? You know, what's your business here at the school? And then escorting them to the appropriate location. Obviously, you know, we've taken many precautionary methods at elementary and middle schools to where we have access control and we have all exterior doors locked, and you have to be buzzed into the front door at all middle and elementary schools during the day. That's obviously much more difficult to attain at the high schools with it being such an open campus. However, that being said, we do have multiple high schools, and obviously we're not going to list the ones that do and do not have this, that you have to be buzzed into the school to where it is very secure. And quite honestly, what contributes to the inconsistency of that situation between campuses is the campus layout. Some schools are just situated in a much better situation to be secured. They're under one roof, et cetera, et cetera. External standalone buildings are limited. So we do take those things into consideration. Probably one of the most important things that we have, and you know, the conversation around anecdotal versus empirical data always comes up when you're talking about being able to show benefits or be able to show proof of what you're doing or what you're not doing, how you improve, what steps you need to take to improve. One of the most important things that we have is the evaluation form after a code red drill, an unannounced drill. To where the public safety officers of our district, they fill out that form for the information and instruction to the principal, so that principal can then get with employees and get with students to let them know where they need to tighten up things. It gives it gives the ability for feedback from public safety to the school in things like, was the staff understandable of what's going on, of what the procedures were when a code red was initiated, how long it took for the organized protocols to be exhibited and implemented in a code red situation. And again, it's not going to be one of those situations, unfortunately, where you're given a pop quiz and you make 100. I can guarantee you that no school is going to make 100, and that's just because there's always room for improvement, and that's going to be the task of our public safety officers to identify those areas that need improvement, identify those areas that need immediate attention and improvement. So that being said, as tragic as the events in Parkland are, and as well as every other school tragedy that takes place, in Cobb, we're certainly not immune and to any of these events. It's not saying that those events cannot happen in Cobb. But I think the message, both to our parents, to our students, to our community, to our staff members, is that we do take very seriously, just with our mission. The mission is not just words on a board, words on a card, we live it. When we say that staff and student safety is the utmost priority in Cobb County School District, we mean it and we live it. And some of those examples I've already mentioned, but I think it is a point to be made that we are doing, in my opinion, many more measures that we have in place than any other school district. I will go on the record as saying that because I know what we have put in place. I know that how many officers we have. I know the training they have. I know the equipment they have. So definitely it is not a let's rest on our laurels kind of situation to where, hey, we're good. We've got this and this and this, and obviously we limit the conversation around exactly what protocols we have in place. But certainly we have to be very cognizant of the fact that it is right near impossible to prevent a person from coming on the campus intending to do harm. What we have to be able to answer is, have we put in place all of the options that we possibly can to ensure the safety and security of our staff and students should somebody come on the campus intending to do harm or ill will? And that answer is always going to be, yes, we are, but. And the but is we can always continually improve because, again, it's all about training. We have to know that, and it's very difficult to grab hold of this concept because when you have a situation that happens in a school, again, we've talked about the safety of our students with the stop arm on the buses. Over 75,000 students ride the bus to and from school each and every day. And it's our job to ensure the safety, and the stop arm and the violations and the system we have in place is a way that we're able to enhance the possibility of safety occurring on every one of our buses for every one of those over 75,000 students. That being said, we can always improve, and that's our job, is to always be cognizant of what our environment is, what's going on in the environment, making sure that we have the appropriate relationships in place between not just school district and our public safety, but public safety of the school district and the county and the municipalities, because God forbid an event like this happen, you've got to have everybody working in harmony to make sure that everybody remains as safe as humanly possible. And that's some of the things that I've mentioned, making sure that first responders understand exactly what's going on, where the situation is, and how to get there in the most expedient manner possible. And we're going to end with the video, but I do want to say that the alert point system that we're very close to being concluded with high schools. I'm not going to tell you how many we've got or how many we've got left. But that system, and you'll see me in the video, that's the Kennesaw Mountain. I will say that because it's going to be obvious that's who that is. But they were the first school, one of the proof of concept schools. And I'll remind you that when we first showed this video back last August, this was a proof of concept. It's no longer a proof of concept. It is in implementation. We are still making tweaks to the system. As you'll hear me say, I've asked for direct feedback from teachers and staff and any staff and our employees. And so with that, I do want to say this is an example of how we put our money where our mouth is. We say we take safety and security seriously. This is an example of how we're trying to secure one of the most honestly difficult situations to secure is the high school campus, and this is just an example of how we're attempting to be able to do that. I will say again, and I'll repeat myself, while it is close to impossible to actually prevent an event like this from happening, you want to make sure that your training is such that you can prevent any students from encountering ill will and danger, and that's what we've got to make sure that we're prepared for, and that's what we have to continually keep our eye on the ball to make sure that we don't misstep, and that as we get, obviously this will be a district-wide implementation at some point in time. I'm not going to say what the time frame is again, but it is something that we take very seriously. And I'll be happy to answer any questions after video, if we can go ahead and roll the video.
Before teachers can begin to teach, before students can begin to learn, they all have to feel safe.
If the teaching staff or the kids do not feel safe or secure in the school environment while they're here, they're not going to fully be able to learn everything that we're trying to teach.
The Cobb County School District has not only trained its staff on safety measures, it is working to empower them too.
I appreciate you guys taking your time to go through this training.
Kennesaw Mountain High School and Bells Ferry Elementary are two proof of concept schools for a system called Alert Point, a crisis alert system.
I think one of the big things we're very excited about is the fact that by having each teacher with access to the system is going to increase the speed at which we can respond to any type of situation in the school.
As the staff at Kennesaw Mountain learned during training, the technology-based system is patterned after the school fire alarm systems.
It's been over 70 years since there's been a death because of a school fire. But that is really because of the communication, the processes, the systems in place. If a fire happens inside a school, everyone knows you quick hit a button. And everyone else knows, hey, when that starts going off with the sound, with the lights, you get out of the building. Under
Alert Point, employees can activate the system.
It can quickly, as you see, immediately go into a lockdown or a code red and notify all building occupants.
Not only do you have a flashing light, you have the beeps to get your attention. They got the flashing lights. The color code dictates what kind of code it is. And on a code red, It's lockdown, immediate danger, locks, lights, out of sight.
It is a way to draw immediate attention to an emergency.
That there's an issue that needs to be dealt with. We're talking medical alert, or if there's some sort of confrontation or altercation or a security issue. The activation will, in fact, within 5 seconds, come up on the board. So, and there you go, staff member number 1.
The person's location shows up on a monitor of the school's floor plan in the front office. It is also immediately displayed on the computers and mobile devices of administrators and police officers both in the building and throughout the district.
D has activated the alert. The alert comes up on the phone, so you just touch this and up it shows with a little red dot where in the building she is.
Anywhere on a school campus.
You're in a hallway, you're in a cafeteria, you're outside, you're at the tennis courts, the track, the football field, in between. It starts to get that attention right away and get responders on their way to you.
Here is a demonstration at Bells Ferry. When the button is activated,
Code red, total school lockdown.
staff
Immediate
members
danger.
know what to do.
Locks, lights, out of sight. Code red, total school lockdown.
This alert system here, they welcome it. They feel so much more secure.
Those testing Alert Point believe it offers help.
A quick response, immediate response.
The staffs at Kennesaw Mountain and Bells Ferry will learn exactly how it works.
I want to hear feedback. If you want to shoot me an email directly, by all means, shoot me an email.
Safety is the district's #1 priority.
So, again, you know, there will definitely be some that try to take advantage of tragic events like this, and you know, we can't do anything about those types of individuals, but we can't say anything about those types of individuals, at least not on TV and when the press is in the room. But I will say again to our parents, to our staff, to our students, and to our community that staff and student safety is our top priority. Obviously, there are protocols that we can't talk about due to they are safety protocols, and we don't want those to be widely known. But the codes, we have the ability to customize those such that when I referenced being able to learn from events and be able to reanalyze your protocols and see if you need to tweak those protocols, that will allow us to do that. And obviously, we will be doing that in the coming weeks and months. We will also be updating our active shooter video, which we had a pretty big press splash when we did that 2 years ago, 1 year ago, 2 years ago. And so we'll be updating that to reflect at the high schools the new system that we have in place, and then at the middle and elementaries as that is rolled out. One thing I'll also mention is I mentioned about during the code red drill about the locks on the doors being activated. One of the projects that we have in SPLOST 5 is actually a rekeying of every school. That's obviously a significant expense, but we felt like, again, we need to put our money where our mouth is, and that is rekeying every school will ensure that we have the appropriate type of locking mechanism everywhere is needed, and the appropriate access is granted to those needing it as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So all of that being said, there's no way to truly, you know, put parents at ease. You know, all of us that are parents know, you know, there's a degree of comfort you can get to, but you're never really 100% there because of these type of events that seem to continuously happen. So all of that being said, I did want to provide, again, the community and our staff and students and board with an update of what we are doing, what we can talk about, what we're doing with school safety as in regards to how it pertains to all sites within the Cobb County school system. So I'd be happy to answer any questions. I know this was unplanned, but considering the events, I felt it was important to provide an update.
Timely information, Mr. Ragsdale. I'm going to go ahead with Mr. Morgan.
I think the time was, thank you, Mr. Chair, really appropriate for you to thoroughly go through that, Chris, and what's moving forward. A couple of questions I had, you answered actually as you were talking. School A, the evaluation, miserably failed it. We doing it again, or, because I know you said is it twice?
Well, now, though, the twice a year is the required code red drills that it's up to the school to determine date and time and all of that good stuff. The unannounced code red drill is when public safety just shows up at a school and says, you're in a code red,
Right.
and then does the analysis and kind of the evaluation form that I mentioned that you're referring to.
Yeah, we miserably failed it. School X miserably failed it. Then what?
First of all, that's not going to be a good day. If someone miserably fails it, because that would indicate that the appropriate level of attention has not been provided to what they have been trained on. All that being said, you know, it's kind of going to basically be like when you go into a restaurant and you look at that grade that they've received. Are you going to go back to that restaurant if they're at a 70? Exactly, you're not. So, and then the inspector is going to be back, and that restaurant is wanting that inspector to be back as soon as possible to get that grade up. Same kind of thing. When the evaluation is given to the school, the assistant superintendent is going to be involved in that process, and the recommendations, some will be immediate, some will be, hey, you know, you need to adjust these for the next code red drill, and that will determine how quickly they need to come back. So that being said, it's not going to be unannounced code red drill. School is and I'm going to just say I don't anticipate any of our schools to fail miserably. But assuming that they don't get a great evaluation, it's not going to be that the school can rest on its laurels knowing that we've got 111 other schools to take care of. We'll be back. And again, that assistant superintendent's going to be involved. And so the appropriate attention is going to be applied. Because the parents need to know that we have performed this evaluation and conducted the analysis and understand that the school is in good standing with that. We're not going to post the grade on the front window, but the principal will be very much made aware of what that is and what they need to do to improve.
Mr. Scamhorn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And in support of what Mr. Ragsdale is saying, I've at the proof of concept at Kennesaw Mountain High School, went out and watched them with that system. And I'll say this: the system's not, you know, the end all to whatever, but it's going to help with any possibilities where other schools or other districts don't have this system. And you know, the other thing is our teachers are not in the military, and they are not trained for multiple hostile threats. So when we're inspecting and checking out and all that, I think they need to be prepared. We need to do what we can. But we may have to double their salary if they're going to go to, you know, to that kind of level of anticipation. But I just wanted to emphasize that the system that we put in the schools are going to really help, where other school districts will probably be visiting us pretty quick now to see, you know, how it works and how it's going to help. Thank you.
Yeah, and one thing that I'll add to that, I appreciate you saying that, because hindsight's always 20/20. It just so happened we wanted to pick Kennesaw Mountain because it was a multi-story building, so we wanted to get a good idea about how that system worked in that environment. But they also did not have the voice over IP system installed yet. I believe they are now done. I think they were completed either last week or week before. that also improves, because obviously with voice over IP comes a phone in every classroom. So that communication is even further enhanced through that system. So, and I'm glad you said this as well. Yeah, it's not the end all be all. There is not there is not a magic recipe for success in any of these. What we have to do is just make sure that we've prepared as much as possible for this type of event, such that God forbid that it actually happens. And I think a good example of that was when the active shooter situation happened over at the Penske truck rental in Kennesaw. You saw law enforcement from all over Cobb County and the state, including State Patrol, just, come down on that facility. And so that's the same type of response that would happen in an active shooter situation or a tragic event in a school. So, yeah, you're right. And again, I go back to, practice does not make perfect. Perfect practice makes perfect. So making sure that we pay close attention to those code red drills, we learn as much as possible from those drills, and the level of seriousness is applied when those drills take place. Because again, if you don't apply the right discipline and the right attitude toward a drill and practice, when the real thing comes to town, it's difficult to make sure everybody's hitting on all eight. So that's why we wanted to, again, do an update for the community, but also for the board to let you guys know that, we are putting our money where our mouth is, and that is the top priority for our school district, is the staff and student safety.
Thank you, Mr. Ragsdale. Mr. Sweeney?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, thank you very much for those comments. Very appropriate. This subject hits pretty close to home. I had an uncle a number of years ago who was shot and killed in a classroom. A student, disgruntled student, pulled the gun and shot him, and then he killed himself. So with regard to the systems that we have at the responses, do any of those detect an acoustical signature of a gunshot? Like, for example, yesterday, one of the things we heard was, there was confusion about balloons being popped versus gunshot. Now, those are two distinctive sounds. And and I'm just thinking of any way that we can to get even a little bit of an advantage. That's question number one. And then question number two is, once an intruder's in the building, obviously safety is paramount, is the ability to secure each and every room. And I know that it's going to differ widely among schools. Some may not have locks, some may have locks. And if they don't have locks, what do they have, or what can they get? Because in many instances, I think it's going to be critical to exercise the greatest amount of safety is that we take a look at seeing what we can do to be able to allow people to secure doors to, give them more time. So those are my questions.
So first question, no, it does not have an acoustical piece that would detect gunshots. But the flip side of that coin is what this particular system does. It puts in the hands of every single badged employee on that campus the ability to issue a code red. And the reason I draw that to the attention, and I'm not giving away any secret, but the closer you are to where the event is happening in an active shooter, the closer you are to the shooter, the more apt you're going to be able to more accurately issue that code red. You know exactly what's going on. Where versus, 10 rooms down the hall, you may perceive that as a balloon pop kind of thing. So the closer you are to the event happening, the more accurate that reporting it can be. The other thing, too, that we have, I'm not going to go into details of it, is the ability to real-time communicate with those badged employees. That is very critical. And the reason I draw your attention to that and make that deliberate statement is, as you very well know, in a school, getting cell phone connectivity is right near impossible. Now that we have Wi-Fi calling capabilities on cell phones, that's certainly more readily available and functional. But being able to have that communication occur without the reliance on cell phone signal or landline signal, et cetera, that's paramount to getting that communication to the right people at the right time in the most expedient manner possible. The other issue that we have, not issue, but the other benefit that we have is the ability for first responders, our first responders, to see on the floor plan exactly where events are taking place, such that, as you see when on the floor plan, it shows up who it is and where they are that has initiated that help request. As people go through that floor plan, if multiple people are clicking help, you can see that something's going on in a particular wing, and it gives first responders the opportunity to make the most expedient manner possible to get to the point where they're most needed. And you know, we're talking about active shooter. That goes with a medical emergency. You know, we had at Osborne, and you know, I can't say enough about Josh Moriel, the principal there, who conducted CPR on a student that had a medical emergency. And because he was able to do, it's got nothing to do with the system, but I can't say this without saying, you know, what he was able to do. He was able to, you know, by doing CPR, keep that oxygen flowing and minimize any kind of brain damage and that kind of thing. We're still hoping for a full recovery and still waiting to get status on that particular student. But that being said, in a medical emergency, the quicker and more accurate the information for a first responder, a paramedic, EMT, the more readily they're going to be able to get there and assist. So being able to have accurate pinpoint information, I just can't say enough about, and immediate. You know, our officers are on the same radio system as Cobb PD and first responders. So being able to have our officers have access on their phone to that floor plan and who's requesting help, what kind of help, and where they are, they can immediately convey that information to 911 and the first responders coming to assist. So I do a pitiful job of remembering multiple questions. So what was your second question?
Second question had to do with barriers in locking doors.
That's right. I remember now, of course. So as I mentioned, SPLOS 5, we have a rekeying project in there. Every classroom door has a lock. That's part of construction design, and the type of lock is dictated by fire code. Fire code dictates that you cannot have to do multiple steps to exit a classroom. So you have to be able to turn that doorknob and that door open regardless if it's locked or not. So for that reason, most locks, they're not deadbolt at all. They're locked with key. All right. And so when that's locked, you can't access it from outside the classroom, but from inside the classroom, you just turn the knob and open the door. So unfortunately, what we have in some cases is keys that are gone. And so then that teacher does not have the ability to lock that door or unlock the door, as the case may be. So that's one thing that we'll be rectifying. And there are a lot of different, I guess, semi-solutions out there for that type of event because you have different types of doors, right, and cafeteria and those kind of things. So those are things that we're looking at, but in a classroom, you know, there's a lot of situations to where like a magnet is placed on the lock where it keeps the door open all the time, that kind of thing. We don't use those nor encourage those at all, just because, you know, when the event comes to town, your training's got to kick in, and pulling a magnet off the door sometimes may not be part of that training. So all of that being said, we do have the necessary funding opportunities in place through SPLOST that we will be looking to do that district-wide initiative quickly.
I can't imagine what the cost would be, but when you talk about magnets, there are, in kind of that one-step exit, is that there are magnetic locks that rely on motion, so there's no action. So if somebody's egressing, that they basically come up, that magnetic lock is released, and then they could actually exit. I can imagine that's a very pricey pricey thing, but I can imagine in a code red situation where, I mean, literally code red goes off and every one of those magnets is activated. That would be amazing.
Yeah, and that's really the way the access control works. It's generally a magnet. Sometimes it's a striker, but yeah, the expense is quite substantial. Regardless of what path we go toward rekeying, it's multiple millions of dollars. Obviously, we've got, you figure we've got 8,000 classrooms, give or take. So, and that does not obviously include offices and front doors and those kind of things. So, but that's, again, a benefit of SPLOST. If it wasn't for SPLOST, we would not be able to even entertain doing something on that large of scale. So we are investigating access control. Obviously, that becomes cost prohibitive somewhat when you talk about student, kind of badges kind of thing. So we are investigating all possible options, though, because, again, the high school campus is one of those situations that's the most difficult to secure. Now, I will say, too, that I failed to mention, I remember I mentioned it last time, another benefit is that this system is independently powered, so that when the power goes out, this system still works, the alert point system. The other benefit of this that was just hugely attractive is twofold. One, it's visible. So you saw the hub that actually flashes LED. We can create our own colors if need be, but that visible notification is key to getting students and staff to immediately and more readily know what to do. Secondly, you heard Dean Oles, the CEO there, he talking about being at the tennis court, being on the football field. We've actually put together the solution such that it's again independently powered, not to give away any of the secrets, but it picks up anywhere on the campus meaning property lines. So if you're on the football field, if you're on the track, if you're in the field house, you don't have to have Wi-Fi access. It's going to pick up that badge for the help signal that's desired.
Done. Mr. Banks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Something like the situation that's happened not only in Florida, but other school districts in the past heightens our awareness of how vulnerable we really are. I'd like to add a couple more things to be considered, and they may already be considered. One is our resource officers' interaction with our students. Our students need to feel that they can come to a resource officer when they see something that's not right or they got a concern about something without recrimination. If they're wrong, but let's err on the side of caution. The other area I would like to get involved is the school community. When they see something that doesn't look right or they have a concern about it, they need to be able to come to the principal or secretary or front office or somebody and say something so that they can take some action if need be. Right now, our community, I think, kind of feels like we ought to be doing, or the school district ought to be doing everything, but the community needs to be involved in it also. That when they see something that doesn't look right, don't be afraid to say something, whether you're right or wrong. If you're wrong, that's great. But if you're right, you saved a life maybe. And I'll say one more thing about it. These people in Florida, these parents, you cannot imagine the grief and the hurt that they're feeling right now when they've lost a child. It's horrible. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing up those points. I will say absolutely our resource officers engage our student bodies. That's one of the things that Wayne Pickett and Ron Story take into consideration when they're hiring resource officers. You know, gone are the days that if you can fog a mirror, you can get a job as being a Cobb County School District resource officer. We have very stringent requirements. Again, they're post-certified, so they have to re-qualify on their weapon. We have very specific training because, again, this is a school environment. There is no other environment that a police officer operates within like a school with hundreds and potentially thousands of students in one location under one roof. So we got to make sure that we've got them properly trained, and they are efficient at that training. I will tell you that the threats that we have responded to that have resulted in action, pretty much the majority of those have come from students that have said, hey, I saw this on Facebook, or hey, you know, this Instagram post, you know, was sent out, kind of thing. Parents being very vigilant in knowing what's on your students and your kids' Facebook and all the social media, because again, I think social media has brought about many more negatives than positives. Not saying there's not any positives, but you'd be hard pressed to get past one hand on counting them. So, you know, it's just one of those things where, you know, we know the environment that we live in and we got to deal with it. It is what it is. So that being said, you have to engage students and parents in a different manner because, you know, where in the past, in our day, you know, the bragging would have been with your buddy that lives in the same neighborhood, you know, and that's pretty much it. Now, you can post something and literally millions of people have seen it, commented on it, and you know, we know all how the commenters go. You know, you get behind a computer and you think anonymity, you know, makes you a big man. But, you know, unfortunately, that's the society we live in today. So we have to take all those things into consideration. But that being said, I would just say I believe that our community, especially our student community within the schools, understands that our resource officers are there for them. They interact with them, especially at the high school level. That's paramount to the successful operation of the resource officers in that high school.
And I will say this for the comfort of our school community is these resource officers are within minutes of any school in our district. So it's not like it's going to take 30 minutes for a resource officer to get to a situation, and because most situations are internal situations like a fight or, you know, something like that. But a resource officer, no matter where the school is located, there can be 1 or 2 or 3 resource officers there in minutes, not long term. It's minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Banks. Mr. Skimhorn?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our resource officers are on location, so it's going to take seconds for them to respond, and they're trained to respond, not to hunker down. So the other thing I'd like to stress, the locking capability. That's an evolutionary thing too. Our administrative teams for the last 20 years has been constantly improving and upgrading on how to get locked down and how to get locked down quickly. And that's particularly important at our high schools because they are open campuses and they have multiple entry points. So I want to stress with your support and concurrence that at every one of our schools, whether it's elementary through high school, our administrative teams are very aware of trying to improve, trying to look for weaknesses. And they're not really trained, they're trained educators, they're not trained terrorist fighters, but they're doing a darn good job of doing it. And even in our older schools, they find ways to lock down push doors, you know, push open doors, and how to get things secured as quickly as possible. And we do, the general public doesn't know this. I'm sure they don't, and they shouldn't have to think of it. But daily with 114 schools, there's always an unidentified person on the campus or in the back of the campus. And generally, it's just somebody walking through the campus or playing hooky from school or something like that. But they respond very quickly. So if I do say so, please add to or differ. We're not just sitting around in Cobb County and waiting for something to come to us. We're taking proactive action. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that again, Mr. Scammerhorn, because you're right. And yeah, I can't say enough about our leadership. We have great leaders that are doing a tremendous job. The reason I brought attention to that and using Mr. Morgan's example of every school is going to have areas identified that they need to improve on. That being said, though, you're exactly right. They're there as the educators to teach our students that show up. Public safety is there to make sure we're identifying, okay, where we need to work and that kind of thing. And you're right, they're not sitting around waiting for the grass to grow, so to speak. But, and the reason I've kind of deliberately focused on that is because none of us like constructive criticism. As much as you can point to whatever, learn from your mistakes, blah, 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 blah. It's all that, it's just hyperbole until it hits you, right? It's easier said than done. Constructive criticism is tough and it's uncomfortable. But until you're made aware of what needs to change, you may not know that needs to change. So, and that's for us all. We're going to be doing this in every building. So there'll be times of discomfort for everyone. There'll be enough to share. But yeah, you're right. And I appreciate you bringing up that because, it seems like that every time we turn around, more and more is being added to the plates of educators. And the principals are charged with making sure that their school's environment is the most appropriate place to teach, lead, and learn. And they've got a very difficult job. That goes without saying. And again, I can't say enough about our entire team in Cobb that just goes above and beyond each and every day. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Ragsdale. Ms. Sayer?
Thanks, Mr. Ragsdale. I appreciate the emphasis that we are placing on safety. And you may have covered this, but what's the plan for spreading this throughout our schools? The new programs for safety.
So basically, the alert point system will be implemented district-wide. The schedule, I'm not going to say. We're starting at high school, and we'll be blowing through the entire district.
So when should it be completed?
Well, I'm not going to say.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I'm
Tomorrow.
not, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Maybe by tomorrow.
Okay. Okay.
As soon as possible,
Okay.
because again, we take very seriously, the benefit that this system brings for us and our staff and
So
students.
it's moving rapidly.
It is moving rapidly.
That's what I
yes.
wanted. Okay.
Yep.
And I know that the changing the locks is in SPLOST. Is this also in SPLOST? Yes. This is SPLOST funded? Okay. All right. Thank you.
It'll be both SPLOST 4 and 5.
Okay.
Yeah.